Hello YouTube viewers, thank you for tuning in to my channel CCM Drummer. My name is Matthew Jackson, and today I have a very special guest. Actually, this is the first time I ever featured a guest in any of my videos. His name is Earl Bennett. Now, Earl Bennett has a YouTube channel called Earl Bennett-Earl Drum. If you want to check out his YouTube channel, just go there. And so let me introduce him. Here's Earl. I got him on FaceTime.
Hi, everybody.
On my cell phone here. Let me set the background, Earl, for our audience as to what prompted us doing this video. Back on either August 1st or 2nd, I don't remember which day in particular, but you released a video that you had recorded in July with a gentleman by the name of Michael Johnson.
Yes.
And by the way, for our audience, Mike also has a YouTube channel called Johnson Drums, I think, isn't it, Earl?
Johnson Drummer, yeah.
Yeah, Johnson Drummer. Anyway, Earl interviewed Michael, and the entire video was 16 and a half minutes. And of course, the first part of the video, they talked about Michael's channel, what he does, his projects, and yada, yada, yada. But the last 7 minutes of that video, you guys talked about the state of praise band drumming because both of you are active praise band drummers, both are working praise band drummers in a church. And so y'all compared notes, and one of the comments that you had made that caught my attention is there's a growing trend in churches today where they will put the drummer now in an enclosed booth. Now when I say enclosed booth to my audience, we're talking total enclosure. We're not talking about just a single set plexiglass panel, but we're talking total enclosure where you can only hear the drums through the PA system that's controlled by a sound man, where a plexiglass panel, the drums still mix into the ambience of the room. It just changes the direction a little bit. So there is a difference. And Earl, one of the comments you had made is you referred to the plexiglass booth as, or the totally enclosed booth as the penalty box.
That's right. That's what I call it, the penalty box.
I had another word for it. I called it the cage. I often say it's a wonder they don't put up a sign that says, "Please don't feed the drummer." But
yeah, that's a good one.
But basically, there are two reasons that I do not like the totally enclosed drum booth, and I think the first reason is because I think it does a disservice to our young millennial drummers who are up and coming, who are learning their craft. They're not teaching them how to play softly. Back in the day when you and I were playing in the 70s, when we did a gig or a praise band gig, we had to take into account the size of the room, the acoustics of the room, and we had to lower our volume. You know, we didn't have the Avion monitors that had the nice mix in our headphones, and you know, the sound man told us that if you can't hear your fellow musicians, you're playing too loud, lower your volume. And playing at a low volume and playing at a high volume, playing at a dynamic range like that and still maintaining tempo is an acquired skill. And it takes a while for a lot of young drummers to acquire that skill. But with the enclosed booth, we're basically sending the message to these drummers, hey, don't worry about it. Play as loud as you want, and we'll control your volume for you.
I agree with you. That's definitely part of what's going on in churches today. And that's because drummers, even back as early in time as drums in church in the 80s, were having problems with that. And the choice that those churches usually chose was either electronic drums or an acoustic drum kit with a cage.
Right.
And the electronic drums are much worse to play to me than playing acoustic drums. But I agree with you, if you go back to when I started playing drums in church, it was all about playing dynamically. And you didn't have your monitor set to your preferences. You had to basically mix yourself in the room with with the monitors and what was going on stage. And sometimes, like, I remember the first church I played in, I was down front of the PA. The piano was on one side, the organ was on the other side, and my wife, who was the worship leader, was singing from the pulpit, and there was no monitors. We basically all had to play at a level to hear the PA, which was just a PV, 10-inch cone speakers, and those silly panel PAs back in the day, and that was how we played. And I had to muffle my drums down and try all kinds of stuff to get the sound to stay down enough so I didn't drown out the people,
And back then, multi-rod sticks were not.
Oh, that was pre-multi-rod stick.
Yeah, we had to use a very light stick, the lightest stick we could. And I remember occasions where if I couldn't hear the bass, I had to look at his hands.
Oh, yeah.
And play in time with his hands. The same thing with the keyboard player or guitar player. So we had to develop coping mechanisms to compensate for that. But if you look in secular venues today, you go to bars or clubs, you go to bar mitzvahs or Christmas parties, wedding receptions, you don't see those guys caged up. Those drummers know how to play a softer tone and adjust their volume to the acoustics of the room.
I played a lot of weddings back in my early days too. That was, matter of fact, when I was in college, I was playing weddings to basically pay my college education. Playing weddings and bar mitzvahs and parties and all kinds of stuff. You didn't get paid in church in those days.
Right.
So I mean, it's like playing in church was giving it to God. That's what I played in church for. But when I played weddings and stuff, you basically had to play at a volume so everybody can hear themselves on it. You blend it out on stage.
And
that was how you did it.
That's just part of being a musician, is knowing how to control the volume of your instruments. I remember taking a drum lesson, and my drum instructor taught me a groove, and I played the groove, and I was playing it a little loud. And then my drum instructor said, okay, you played the groove good, now play that same groove at the same tempo, but half the volume. So playing at low volumes, that's sort of like a rudiment.
Definitely. I agree. Playing with dynamics, being able to play at all volumes should be every drummer's mantra. And the funny thing is, some of my favorite drummers don't play that loud. Steve Gadd does not hit the drums as hard as you might think he hits the drums.
Right.
He doesn't. If you've ever seen Steve Gadd live, he really does not hit that hard. A lot of those guys didn't hit that hard. I remember when I made my first record in Nashville in 1987, the first record I was ever on, the engineer came out and said, hit that thing like you're beating your stepchild. That's what he said to me. I didn't like what he said to me because I had a stepchild, so I was not really happy about that, to be honest. But what he was really trying to say to me was hit the thing as hard as you possibly can. And that was to get the sound. He wanted me to get the snare to hit so loud so the reverb would be engaged, because they were printing the reverb while we were recording back in those days. Now, you don't do that today with digital recording. Everything's done after the fact, EQ, compression, everything. So it's a different world we live in. And that's what you're talking about. The world has changed. And what young drummers are taught today is to hit the drum as loud as they possibly can, because the sound guy's going, I gotta set the gates. I hate gates on my drums. Matter of fact, I drive sound guys nuts with gates. If I'm working at a church and they've got a sound guy that wants to gate my snare drum, you're losing all the notes I play, because I play so many ghost notes that are so quiet that make the groove, So they're taking away the opportunity for drummers to even understand about feel.
Right.
And feel was everything in what a drummer played. I mean, if you listen to, and I know you talk about Keith Green, if you listen to the early Keith Green records and you hear Bill Maxwell playing drums, it's his pocket. I mean, he's just an amazing drummer. He had a certain way he played things, the way he hit the hi-hat, the way he got the snare in there, the little ghost notes between, the way he hit the kick drum with the force he hit. That's what made his sound. drums were unique back then, and today it's all just cut up and sampled, and beat detected. So we're living in a different world now. It's a different world. It's not actually, that's why when I do drum covers, I just try to find my thing, because for me, I'm gonna try to have fun with it than try to lock myself to whatever anybody else did, because everybody sounds like everybody today, if you ask me. Nobody sounds unique.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
No, that's all I was gonna say. I mean, I just did a cover I released today that I tried to play exact Matthew. I got pretty close on this one, but that was because I had to bury the drum track on it. I didn't have it drumless. So if you're playing with a track and you're not drumless, you better be darn close, otherwise you're gonna have some issues with it. As you know, you and I have had this conversation.
Yeah, and that's the challenge of playing exact. Is you got to play with the original drummer if you're not playing drumless. And but you brought up a good point about you playing in the booth or in the enclosed booth and how the sound man squelches out your ghost notes.
Oh, yeah.
And that leads to my second point. The second reason I don't like enclosed drum booths is because it squelches out the ethereal, aesthetic part of the, the aesthetic parts. The cymbal rolls, the little tinkles on a cymbal, the sound of the chimes. I've seen idiot sound men where you'd be watching the praise band play and you'd be hearing the drums, you'd be hearing the hi-hat and snare, boom, boom, and you'd hear the fills real well. And then when the drummer ends the fill on a crash, he hits the crash cymbal, and you can see the crash cymbal move in the booth, but you can't hear it because the idiot sound man didn't capture. The cymbals had overhead mics, but obviously he didn't have them turned up or whatever. But the chimes, the cymbal rolls, those little soft things, because in a praise band set, every praise band does about maybe 4 to 6 songs, and your first 2 or 3 are real fast, upbeat, and then the later songs are more softer, and that's when you're going to be doing the more aesthetic, ethereal type effects with the cymbal rolls, the chimes, and all those other things. Well, if it's all in a booth, all that stuff gets squelched, and it takes away the organic feel of the song. And if there's any music that should be totally organic, it should be praise music.
Yeah. I think that the way drummers have to be is you have to train the sound guys. So when I work in a different church, I talk to the sound guys and I say, listen, if you're gating my snare, it's not going to sound right. It's just not, and I play with such dynamics even when I play in the booth, because what I do to myself to get myself to hear the booth the way I want to hear it is I turn the overhead mics, which are usually one of the drum mic, on the channel, on the Avion, when I've got in-ears in, I turn the drums all the way up. Now, a lot of guys say, no, you want to turn them all the way down. No, that makes you play louder, okay? When you turn your Avions all the way up, what happens is now if you start really smacking cymbals, guess what? You're just blowing your ears out. You don't want to do that. So it's my way of basically self-monitoring myself and getting my mix to sound like me. And that's how I do it in my studio too. I have my overheads hot enough where it's in the mix and the kick and snare are punchy in my ears, I feel okay about it, but I know if I'm overplaying, I'm playing to the overheads. I always like to play to the overheads. That's my way of self-monitoring myself in the booth. Well, if the guys are using gating and stuff, they're gonna be losing a lot of me all day long because I'm not gonna play as hard. I just don't. I've learned not to, There will be times I'll dynamically pull it out and it'll come out punch through, but it's not gonna be always. It's not gonna be there.
Do you have much experience playing with percussionists?
Yeah, I was actually the church I'm at right now had a percussionist for about a year, and he was a nice salt and pepper percussionist. He wasn't all over the place. But if you're with a guy who's wants to take over, that's a problem. Well, I've had those guys too. Yeah.
The cool thing about a percussionist in a praise band situation, usually the first half of the set they can play the congas and play some really ripping grooves, but and the later part of the set where the songs gets more soft and more solemn, that's where the percussion can really add and contribute with the chimes, the cymbal rolls.
Yeah.
But if the drummer is in an enclosed booth and the percussionist is not, a lot of churches will not employ percussionists because they're drummers in an enclosed booth and they think they got to put their percussionist in one too, and they don't want to do that. It's awkward to have the percussionist outside the booth.
Yeah, we had some plexiglass around the congas. That was about it. And the cool thing about the church I am playing at right now is the booth is enclosed, but it does have some bleed. You know, it's one of those. It's got a top on it and everything, but it's got some bleed. I've played in booths that you literally nobody can talk to the drummer through the booth, and I can't talk to them. There should be a talkback mic in there. I did a night of worship or actually it was a service at my wife's university, Palm Beach Atlantic University this year, with some guys I played with in another praise band for a while. And Palm Beach Atlantic, in their chapel, it's such a ringy chapel, they bought a drum booth that is the drum booth from hell, if you want to talk about a drum booth. You can hear nothing coming out of it except through the mics, and you cannot talk to anybody in it, and it's hot, and it's just, you're stuck on it. It's actually on springs.
Yeah.
It's on these metal springs, and the thing moves, and you kind of like, you're playing, and you can feel yourself moving around, and you're going, wow, it's like playing on a boat. You know, if you've ever played on a boat gig.
Yeah, I've seen.
Boats kind of doing this.
You know how you'll see the bass player come near the drummer, and the bass player will make eye contact with the drummer and maybe bop his bass guitar up and down and start vibing with the drummer. Right. Is that still doable in an enclosed booth? Because I haven't seen much of that. Have you?
Well, it's possible if you're dialed in on the ears, but the whole in-ear monitoring system is a plus and a minus. The plus to the in-ear monitors is you can use click tracks. You know, everybody can be in time. You can hear the vocals the way you want to hear them. The other thing is when you've got a musician that's not playing well, you can take them out. I mean, you can literally say, I don't listen to you today. Click, you're gone. It's pretty, and that's helpful sometimes, especially when you have people that can't play with the click and they're all over the place, okay? So I've learned how to use the in-ears in that way. But if I am working with a great bass player, I can turn them in. I can tune them in and we'll be locked for the gig. It'll work. Problem is most church bass players are not very good bass players. That's been my experience. You rarely run into guys that are really good.
Well, in churches in general, I've noticed that they're like the minor leagues of music because a lot of your musicians get their start in church if they go on to secular venues. And hence the reason, I've always looked at churches as a good training ground because a lot of your percussionists in church aren't that good. Mm-hmm. And I'd say that and sometimes on occasions drummers as well, but that's a training ground, and it's unfortunate that we're not training our drummers to the other dynamics involved and that you got to learn and know in secular venues. And,
I agree. It is something that is becoming a lost art, unless you're playing in an open space. I've been blessed to play in a bunch of churches where I was in the open or just the one plexiglass in front of me. But, unfortunately, the last few years I've been spending more time in that penalty box thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say is the penalty box just makes it hard to communicate with everybody and they don't see you, and sometimes you don't have eye contact because you don't have line of sight with people. And that's what music's all about, is listening to one another.
Yeah, it's making that human contact. Well, Earl, listen, I really appreciate you coming on my channel and talking to me about this. Guys, please subscribe to Earl's channel, Earl Bennett Earl Drums. I think any guy that if you are interested in improving your craft in the drumming arts, I think it would behoove you to subscribe to Earl's channel. He has a lot of features. He does a lot of drum covers, and he does a whole wide range of styles. So he's proficient in many different genres, not just one. Also, he has a thing called Ask Earl Anything, where he disseminates a lot of information. He's very knowledgeable when it comes to equipment and also the different styles. So you would want to also, it'd be a benefit to you to watch that as well as his drum talk videos. So yeah, please tune into Earl's channel. So that's it. Earl, thank you once again.
Thank you, Matthew.
And maybe we can do this again someday.
Yeah, maybe I'll do it from my channel.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for tuning in, YouTube viewers. We're signing out. God bless.